everybody, welcome to GBE Reviews. I'm your host Joe, and today I'm going to be talking about the anime Love Hina. Love Hina is an interesting anime, in that it's so simplistic and yet so deep. At first, its slapstick nature and love triangle trope feel a bit stale and boring, but then you realize this anime came out in 2000 and it's most likely cemented these tropes for generations of anime to come. So I guess in a way it's a pioneer and helped establish those tropes. I think the problem is some of those tropes are not so great and maybe anime could do without them, but in general I think they were done well and original in this anime. Alright, so let's talk about the story. The story centers around Keitaro, a 20-year-old guy who is trying to get into Tokyo University because he made a promise with a girl when he was a young kid. I guess you could say it's like a first love story. The problem is Keitaro is a bit of a dummy and can't really get into Tokyo U, and he's failed several times. He ends up going to visit his grandma who runs a girls' dormitory and gets stuck with the job of being the dormitory manager. From there, this one gets a bit tricky. At first, the story is just an episode of the week silly show where Keitaro is always getting in trouble and beat up by the girls due to one reason or another. You know, your typical ecchi trope where he falls over or grabs somebody in the wrong place, that kind of thing. Over time, the show actually develops a pretty solid romantic plot between Keitaro and Narusegawa. On top of that, there's all sorts of interesting happenings with each of the residents of the house. Eventually, though, Narusegawa's prior love interest and someone who may be the girl from Keitaro's past join the cast of characters and things get really interesting. Around this point in the story, it becomes a will they won't they between Keitaro and Narusegawa, but the problem is she's afraid to admit her feelings and he lacks the confidence to believe she could fall for him. I would ask if you've seen that plot a million times over, but my bet is most people in 2000 couldn't really say that. Many warm emotional moments happen in this anime as Keitaro helps each of the residents with their struggles and issues. So either way, watching it in 2017, I have to admit the plot felt trite and boring and the slapstick nature was a bit overdone. That being said, there were a lot, and I mean a lot, of things this anime does well. The internal struggle between the characters and their interactions were exquisite. The love triangle that formed during the show makes things emotional, and I truly didn't know how things were going to go until the end. There were also a lot of interesting philosophical things that happened. For example, the old men, who were the elders of the town, would randomly show up and say things and then disappear. A lot of what they said was kind of pertinent to the plot, and if you thought about it for a while, they actually gave some pretty good advice. Also, the analysis of the word dream in English versus the word yume in Japanese, and what they really meant and how one truly follows their dreams was also very poignant. Finally, there was a line that a random guy who tried to get with Narusegawa says in the last episode about giving up and being just like other guys. It was the thing that I think motivated Keitaro, and yet it was almost a throwaway line and didn't get very much emphasis. So I guess I would say it's a lot of the little things in this anime that really add up to make it something special. Now I can't get completely lovey-dovey with the anime though, as I thought the ending was rubbish. Now don't get me wrong, they wrapped things up in Love Hina again, but that came out several years later and was a disappointing 3 episodes. As the 24 episode anime stands, the ending was much ado about nothing. All in all, I thought the story was good minus the ending, though I think the slapstick comedy was a bit overdone. If you take the time to think about what's going on behind the story and between the major plot points, there's a lot here to digest. Oh, and one side note, there seems to be a lot of side stories which I didn't really watch. I did see the side story featuring Motoko, and I thought it was funny and did a good job giving back to the story about her. I definitely recommend checking some of them out if you enjoyed the main series. Alright, so let's talk about the art in this anime. The art in this one is good for the time. It's definitely dated compared to current anime, but there's a certain nostalgia you get from watching something done before the fancy computer programs and all that special tech art they have now. The characters range from unique to common, though overall I found the cast diverse and the artwork done well. So one thing to point out is even though this one's a bit of a romance ecchi harem, it's PG-13 so there's no nudity. There's a bunch of kinda close to nudity, but nothing really explicit, so if you're hoping for something along those lines you might be disappointed. So as far as the sound, I thought the sound in this one was also pretty good. The mix of upbeat songs and slower pieces really rounded out the anime. I liked how the character sang the theme song in a different style during one of the episodes. It was pretty neat because you got to hear the characters each sing, and also because the intro theme had a whole new meaning in the context of the episode. All in all, I enjoyed the soundtrack, and personally loved the voice actress who played Otohime. Her voice was that kind of dopey, lovey-dovey type that I personally love. Alright, so finally, how are the characters? I found that the characters themselves are where this anime shined the most. I found that each of the girls in Keitaro were done extremely well. You got to know each of them, their motivations, and what they were all about. I also found them to be generally likable and unique in their own way. They each brought a different dynamic to the group, and I didn't think the group really would have been as good if any of them were missing. Unfortunately, I thought a few of the side characters weren't given as much attention, and even though they did get a handful of screen time, you didn't really know a whole lot about them. I thought Seidado and Sarah, Keitaro's aunt, and Mitsune could have used a bit more work. Overall, though, the characters were great, and they were what made this anime with a semi-cliche plot into something special. Alright, so it's time to answer that number one most important question. Should you watch this anime? So the kind of people who would like Love Hina. Do you enjoy classic anime that were done with that classic older animation style? Do you like an anime with a great cast of characters all living together in one house and appreciate all the funny antics that can ensue? Do you like a drawn-out romantic plot that develops slowly over time and leaves you surprised up through the ending? Alright, so the kind of people who might not like Love Hina. Do you dislike romantic stories where the ending is left up in the air? Are you bored with the slapstick and accidental chest grabbing you've seen 100 times over? Do you prefer a more traditional harem where all the female characters have an explicit interest in the main character? In summary, I enjoyed Love Hina. I watched this one fairly quickly and looked forward to each episode. I thought the plot had some cliche elements, but I appreciated the hidden messages, excellent characters, and especially the fact that this one was released almost 20 years ago. Not sure it's early enough to say, but in the genre of comedy ecchi, I think this one's a classic. Well, that's it for me. As always, I'm your host Joe, and this is GBE Reviews. If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe, and please share with a friend. Thanks again, Jane.
Oh, please don't let me die.